What if Obi-Wan and Yoda are behind the deaths of Luke's parents? I know this sounds ridiculous, but I guarantee that you will not be able to look at Star Wars the same after this video. Now let me explain. Obi-Wan and Yoda are essentially responsible for the state of the galaxy at the time of A New Hope. Obi-Wan played a significant role in the rise of Darth Vader and failed to kill him on Mustafar. Yoda, on the other hand, couldn't defeat the Emperor and went into hiding, waiting for another chance. These two likely carried a heavy sense of guilt, unable to do anything about it for years until the Rebel Alliance appeared. By the time the rebels posed a threat to the Empire, Luke had grown up, had attachments to his home and family, and even wanted to join the Imperial Academy. With this in mind, it's unlikely that he would have made a good Jedi, one capable of leading the Rebel Alliance and defeating the Empire. Of course, there was also Leia, but she had already built a successful political career, so the sacrifices she would have to make would be far greater than Luke's. Plus, she wasn't as strong in the Force. Thus, Obi-Wan and Yoda chose Luke. But how could they get them to go to war against his father and prevent him from joining him? If you watch episode 4 thinking that Obi-Wan is trying to lure Luke to his side, very much like how Palpatine manipulated Anakin, you'll notice that something is off. It all starts with Obi-Wan's likely accomplice R2-D2 escaping, luring Luke into a trap, which gives Obi-Wan the opportunity to rescue Luke, thus gaining his trust. Convenient, isn't it? Next, Obi-Wan tries to convince Luke to go on an adventure to save a princess, after first telling him an inspiring story about the Clone Wars and his father. He withholds the truth about Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader, claiming that Anakin was betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader. While it's metaphorically true, Obi-Wan knows that Anakin is Darth Vader, but he doesn't tell Luke. This shows that Obi-Wan is willing to twist the facts to achieve a greater purpose, guiding Luke to confront the Empire and Vader. Obi-Wan obviously hoped that this story would awaken the desire to become a Jedi in Luke, but that didn't happen.
You must learn the ways of the Force, if you are to come with me to Alderaan.
Luke is more concerned about explaining all this to his uncle than about the fate of the princess or the galaxy. After the first failed attempt, Obi-Wan becomes more persistent. He is no longer suggesting, he is ordering Luke to learn the ways of the Force.
Learn about the Force, Luke.
Luke refuses again and instead offers to give Obi-Wan a ride to the spaceport, clearly hinting that he is becoming uncomfortable. Obi-Wan, being a master negotiator, realizes that he has pushed too hard and pretends that he is not pressuring Luke at all, and that Luke can do whatever he wants.
You must do what you feel is right, of course.
But by the expression on Obi-Wan's face, it's clear that peaceful attempts to get Luke to fight against the Empire haven't worked, so he'll have to play dirty. Let's imagine we're in Obi-Wan's shoes. How do we get Luke to want to fly to Alderaan with us? The inspiring story about his father didn't work, and the beautiful princess doesn't interest him. That leaves one option: destroy everything that ties Luke to Tatooine, namely Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. The Jedi Order code is clear: attachments are dangerous. Anakin Skywalker's downfall is a prime example of how emotional bonds can lead a Jedi astray. Anakin's love for his mother and his obsessive attachment to Padme drove him to the dark side, ultimately leading to the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Obi-Wan and Yoda witnessed this firsthand. Let's apply this mindset to the situation on Tatooine. Obi-Wan knows that if the Empire finds the droids that have fallen into the hands of the Jawas, it won't be long before they are traced back to Owen and Beru. Obi-Wan could easily have contacted someone in Mos Eisley to inform the Empire about the Jawas' dealings with the droids, fully aware that this would lead to a confrontation with Luke's family. Once the stormtroopers traced the droids back to Owen and Beru, their deaths were almost inevitable, thus severing any attachment Luke had to Tatooine. After rejecting Obi-Wan's offer, Luke drives him to the spaceport, and very conveniently they stumble upon an ambushed Jawa sandcrawler. Obi-Wan guides Luke directly to the scene of the massacre and plants the seeds of anger toward the Empire, saying that Imperial stormtroopers are behind the attack.
Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
Luke puts 2 and 2 together and understands that his family is in danger because of the droids. And guess what Obi-Wan does? Nothing. He's very collected, very calm, and very cold-hearted. He doesn't show any sign of worry towards the Lars family. The only thing he cares about is Luke's safety, but at the same time he doesn't try to stop him. This is probably because he understands that Luke's parents will be dead and the stormtroopers gone by the time Luke arrives. So he just makes it look like he is concerned, when in fact everything is going according to his design. Luke drives off to check on his home, finds the charred bodies, and drives back. What would Obi-Wan do if he wasn't part of this plot? He would ask if everything is okay and try to comfort Luke in some way, but guess what he does instead? The first thing he says is that there was nothing Luke could have done.
There's nothing you could have done, Luke, had you been there. You'd have been killed too, and the droids would now be in the hands of the Empire.
This implies that he knows what happened even before Luke tells him anything, and on top of all that, he shows no emotion. Of course, Obi-Wan and the Lars weren't friends, but they had known each other for 20-something years. There would definitely be some sorrow from Obi-Wan if he weren't involved in this devious plot. Now, there is nothing to hold Luke back, and judging by Obi-Wan's reaction, he realized at that moment that his plan had been successfully executed.
I want to come with you to Alder. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
Now Luke wants to be a Jedi hero and fight the Empire. It's unlikely that Obi-Wan would make such a drastic decision without consulting Yoda. As the most senior Jedi, Yoda would have understood the stakes better than anyone. Yoda's pragmatism is evident in The Empire Strikes Back, where he initially refuses to train Luke, believing him to be too old and reckless, much like Anakin. Yet, once the training begins, Yoda repeatedly emphasizes the danger of attachments. He warns Luke against rushing off to save his friends, knowing that this emotional impulse could lead him down the same path as his father. Yoda is willing to sacrifice personal attachments for the greater good, so it's not unthinkable that he would sanction the deaths of Owen and Beru if it meant keeping Luke's focus on the bigger picture. There is also the possibility that Obi-Wan didn't need to contact the Empire at all. He knew the droids contained crucial information. As a war general, he might have anticipated that the Empire would eventually trace them back to Owen and Beru, leading to their deaths or torture. He saw the outcome coming from afar, but instead of acting, he allowed the situation to unfold, knowing this would eliminate Luke's ties to Tatooine. I know that in Legends, Darth Vader observed the stormtroopers executing the Lars over a holotransmission, and it was done in a weird and maniacal way, like Vader telling the stormtroopers not to end the transmission so he could watch. If you ask me, that's a bit out of character for him. Why would he hate them that much? Most of all, why would he care about them to the extent that he would ask for their names and mock them during their execution, instead of looking for the actual plans? Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Also, remember in Return of the Jedi when Luke confronts Obi-Wan and basically calls out his bullshit about betrayed and murdered your father story?
Why didn't you tell me? You told me Vader betrayed and murdered my father.
Obi-Wan doesn't have anything better to say than, oh, you know, from a certain point of view, I told you the truth. This clearly pisses Luke off, and Obi-Wan, seeing this, sits down and decides to tell more stories about Anakin, which he knew Luke would want to hear. Then Obi-Wan pushes Luke toward the idea that he has to kill his father, which isn't really the Jedi way.
There is still good in him.
He's more machine now than man, twisted and evil.
I can't do it, Ben.
You cannot escape your destiny. You must face Darth Vader again.
I can't kill my own father.
Then the Emperor has already won. You were our only hope.
Anyway, the theory we discussed today paints Obi-Wan and Yoda in a much darker light. I think it's a cool theory. I've never seen anyone talk about it, and I think it's up there with the Sith Lord Jar Jar theory. What do you think? I'd love to read your comments on this. If you want something equally ridiculous, check out this older video about a hypothetical scenario where Yoda became an alcoholic. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on your way out.